The shout came from behind the red door of Nneka's hut, where the young woman had gone into labor at midnight. The midwife, Mama Ihuoma, who had delivered more babies than she could count and whose hands were as steady as old mortar, stumbled out, one arm cradling a wailing bundle. The cry that came from that small, slippery body was not newborn soft. It ripped like a small animal and cut through the night. Mama Ihuoma's hand shook as she held the child up toward the lamp. Under the warm oil glow, two tiny white points flashed inside that newborn mouth, not gums, but teeth, two paws of teeth, perfectly formed and shining like new seeds. God of the crossroads, she whispered, the words falling to the dirt. Her voice had the brittle edge of someone who has seen too much. She set the child on a mat and stumbled back. Chukwu, forgive us, she said to no one in particular. This child is not ordinary. Nneka, spent and pale on the mat, blinked sleep-dazed at what was held before her. A tooth. She managed, then fainted. The baby's cry grew louder and, for reasons nobody could say, the sound made everybody shiver. By sunrise the hut door was flung open and voices filled the compound, half prayer, half accusation. Word travels faster than any market wagon. Before the cocks finished their first chorus, women at the market had dropped yams in their baskets to exchange gossip. The rice seller, the tailor, the boys who ran errands, everyone spoke the same single line like a fever. They were born with teeth. At the center of the square, under a sun that refused to hide what it revealed, old men leaned on crooked staff and spat into the dust. An abomination, said Ihuoma, his voice dry as a broken calabash. His wife clucked her tongue and rubbed the hem of her wrapper with nervous fingers. What spirit is learning how to bite us? Two sides formed almost immediately, the fearful and the furious. The fearful called on Dibia Okoro, the village diviner whose cowrie shells had steered many a man away from danger. He was a lean man, bald as a mortar, his face cut with tribal marks and eyes that seemed to measure every lie. When he shook the cowries, the shells clattered like rain and fell into a pattern that made him frown for the first time in years. This is not the doing of one woman, nor the work of a single midwife, Dibia Okoro told the gathered crowd, his voice low and grave. This is a sign, a gate that has been opened. The land we live on remembers wrongs. Until the truth is dragged into light, the earth will not forget. The furious railed at anyone who would listen, men who wanted scapegoats. Is it the Christians? One barked. Another spat, or the forest people? Did someone steal a charm? Did a witch come through last month? Fingers pointed to strangers, to families who had argued over land last year, to the new widow who had cursed her husband's second wife, to the trader who changed the river's course to make his meal. Villages thinly wrapped their patience the way women tied wrappers too tight. Something had to give. Pregnant women moved through the market like ghosts, clutching their bellies as if the teeth might jump through cloth and take root. Mothers held their infants closer. Boys dared each other to touch the newborn's gums. Then flinched back and laughed like men who had been given a dare they wished they hadn't accepted. When it happened a second time, and then again, first 3, then 5, then 10, the pattern turned whispers into an unsteady march. The midwives met beneath the iroko tree, their shawls knotted tight and their faces wet with sleepless nights. Mama Ihuoma, who had apprenticed under a grandmother who died with bones like split wood, spoke with a hand over her mouth. We have delivered for 3 generations, she said. Never have I seen teeth on a baby. Something hungry has found the door. They brought Dibia the shells, and he poured libations into the small river at the edge of town, letting water swallow his words. When even the river answered with a sound like a sob, he called for a council. At the council, elders in worn wrappers and beaded caps leaned forward, the tobacco pipes burning slow. Dibia Okoro's voice cut the night like a cutlass. This is not only a sign. It is a voice. Some secret hunger was fed, and now it calls for balance. Who among us is to blame? A young father asked, pressing his forehead to his palm. Men shuffled. A few faces in the crowd twitched with the memory of fights, of business stolen, of a burial rush to please a government official who did not know how to die with dignity, but there was one woman who clutched her pot so tightly that her knuckles whitened. Her name was Ngozi. She was 30, not old, with a soft round face that held the kind of beauty which children named after the moon. Today, Ngozi's eyes were small as beads and fleeting, guilty as an animal in sunlight. "Madam Ngozi." An elder called. "Do you know something?" She said nothing. Her mouth moved like a bird's, but she kept the secret inside. People watched her as if the secret might crawl out from under her wrapper. She had been present at the harvest when a strange gift had been accepted, a polished wooden box left at the shrine with no name and no prayer. Ngozi laughed then, saying it was a gift for luck. But now the hush leaned heavy on her shoulders like wet cloth. Rumors began to fan into new shapes. Some said the teeth were a sign of prosperity, babies who could bite through poverty. A merchant from the next town who came to buy palm oil clapped in his hands and declared the infants lucky, promising silver and loads of yam to any family that would sell him a tooth. Most recoiled at the thought. Others muttered the word Ogbanj. A spirit child returned again and again to cause family pain. At the market the next day, a man lifted his infant's lip and laughed nervously. There was nothing. He laughed too long and left early, shoulders tight, the look of a man who had seen the future and disliked it. By the time the moon tilted over the compound again, every midwife who lived within Umu's had recorded a teeth bath. Songs that once praised the harvest turned low and hard. Bells that once called the faithful to market were silent now, or struck only in a weary rhythm. People stopped inviting the midwives to weddings and newborn naming ceremonies. The air tasted of old iron. In the dim light of his hut, Dibia Okoro kept the cowrie shells in a ragged cloth. He had called for a cleansing. He had called for truth. But truth, like a stubborn goat, had a way of hiding in the thicket, sharpening its horns, waiting for someone careless enough to walk into it, and somewhere, in the hush between sleep and the coming storm, Ngozi pressed her palms to the curve of her own belly, a small, secret movement, and breathed the name she had once said in jest, as a joke at the shrine, a name that sounded like the beginning of trouble. By the third moon, the midwives of Umus could no longer walk through the marketplace without whispers trailing behind them. Once honored as keepers of life, they were now treated as cursed hands. Women crossed the road to avoid their shadows. Children made the sign of the cross when they passed. Mama Ihuoma, who had first delivered the teeth baby, woke one dawn to find a dead chicken tied to her doorway with red string. A curse. She fell to her knees, clutching her rosary with one hand and her cowrie bracelet with the other, caught between two gods. The other midwives gathered under the Iroko tree again. Their faces, once proud, looked hollow, the eyes sunken. "Are we witches now?" One cried, "Who will call us to birth again?" Another asked, voice breaking, but before they could answer, a drumbeat rose from the center of the village. The elders had called another meeting, the square filled with restless bodies. Men leaned forward with fists clenched. Mothers whispered into their wrappers. Pregnant women kept to the back, fear etched into their faces. Izagbona, the elder with the crooked staff, struck the ground 3 times. "We cannot sit in silence while the children of Umus are born like spirits. This is a stain on our people. Somebody is guilty. Somebody has broken a covenant." Eyes shifted, searching for blame. One man stood, pointing at the midwives. "They are the ones who carry the babies out. If evil enters, it comes through their hands." "No!" Mama Ihuoma shouted, voice cracking. "We are servants of life. We only catch what the womb gives us. If the womb is cursed, blame the mothers. If the land is cursed, blame the ancestors. But don't tie our hands with blood we did not spill." The crowd roared, some in agreement, others in fury. Fingers pointed next to Ngozi, who stood trembling near the back. Her hands clutched the edge of her wrapper, knuckles pale. Someone hissed, "It is her." She laughed at the shrine when that box was brought. She mocked the gods. Ngozi shook her head, lips trembling. I did nothing. But her eyes darted to the ground, betraying her. Fear turned to violence sooner than anyone expected. One night, when the moon was a thin sickle and the owl sang from the forest, a baby began to wail, but it was not the ordinary cry of hunger. It was sharper, a rasping sound that set teeth on edge. The father, a palm wine tapper named Obinna, tried to soothe the child. He lifted his son, cradling him against his chest, when suddenly the baby's jaw snapped down. The newborn's tiny teeth pierced his father's skin. Obinna screamed, dropping the child onto the mat. Blood spattered from his shoulder, staining the walls. His wife wailed as the baby thrashed, its gums red, its cry louder than thunder. By dawn, Obinna was dead from fever, his body swollen. His wife wrapped herself in ashes and sat outside the compound, wailing, "A child has killed its father. A curse walks among us." The whole village gathered. Some said the baby was not human and must be cast into the river. Others said the mother must be cleansed with fire. Dibia Okoro arrived, his cowries clattering in a calabash. His face was hard, his voice colder than stone. This is no longer just a sign. It is a plague. The land is bleeding for a sin yet unspoken. That night, as the village tossed in restless sleep, Ngozi sat by her hearth, staring at the flicker of fire. Her belly, round with a child, stirred beneath her wrapper. She pressed her palm against it, trembling. She had not told anyone what she remembered that day at the shrine. The box, carved with strange symbols, was left at the foot of the deity statue. She had laughed, yes. She had even touched it. But she had not opened it. Still, since then, her dreams had been filled with teeth, rows and rows, grinning, biting, grinding. She saw babies born with mouths that chewed her name. When her husband entered, smelling of palm oil and sweat, she nearly screamed. He asked what troubled her, but she shook her head. She could not speak. To confess now would be to invite the wrath of both people and gods. Outside, a wind rose, rattling the thatch roofs. Dogs howled. Somewhere in the dark, a child cried, and though it was just a normal cry, it made every mother clutch her baby tighter. By the 6th month, the fear had become unbearable. No child born was without teeth. No naming ceremony felt like a blessing anymore. The drums beat hollow, and the songs cracked in mothers' throats. The elders gathered again. Ihuoma spoke, "If this continues, we will have no children fit for the future. Already, blood has been spilled. Who among us will confess what sin has opened this door?" The silence was thick. Even the crickets seemed to hold their tongues. Then, from the edge of the crowd, Mama Ihuoma spoke, the old midwife whose hands had caught the first teeth child. Her eyes were dark pools of exhaustion. "I do not know the sin," she said, "but I know this, the curse is growing stronger. Soon it will not be teeth alone. The children will come with hunger in their bones. They will eat us before they walk." Her words dropped into the crowd like hot coals. Mothers sobbed. Fathers clenched their fists. And Ngozi, poor trembling Ngozi, felt her belly shift, as if the child inside had heard and laughed. She bent double, clutching her stomach, and whispered through clenched teeth, "Gods have mercy. Mine will be next." It was the New Yam Festival, the one day when even sorrow was meant to bow before joy. The masquerades had danced through the market, masks painted with fire and chalk, drums thundered, and roasted yam filled the air with sweetness, but the feast turned sour before the second dance began. A young mother, Adiz, had brought her newborn son to the celebration. The baby was barely 2 weeks old, wrapped tightly against her back in bright Ankara cloth. She had wanted to prove to the whispering women that not every child was cursed, but as the drummers beat their skin, the baby's cry pierced the air. Adiz untied her clothes to check him. Before the crowd, the child lunged toward her breast, teeth gleaming unnaturally white, and beat so deep that Adi's scream silenced the drums. Blood spilled down her wrapper, and the crowd scattered in terror. Men tried to intervene, but the infant clung to her like a beast, jaw-locked. By the time they pried him away, Adis had fainted, her chest torn. That night, no one ate yam. The festival fire burned without laughter. The elders shook their heads, muttering, "Even our festivals cannot wash away this curse. The gods are angry." The next morning, a stranger entered Umeus. He was a traveling prophet, bare-chested with only a white cloth tied around his waist. His beard was long, his staff marked with ash. He walked straight to the village square and called for silence. "The land has been defiled," he declared. A covenant was broken, and now the spirits of the unborn walk with teeth. If no one confesses, your children will eat you before they learn to walk. The villagers trembled. Some clapped in fear, others spat on the ground. The prophet raised his staff high. "Bring out the guilty one. Bring out the hand that touched what should not be touched." All eyes turned toward Ngozi. She stood rooted, her belly heavy now, sweat breaking on her forehead. She wanted to scream, to confess, but her tongue felt nailed to the roof of her mouth. Her husband grabbed her arm protectively, glaring at the crowd. "Leave my wife alone. She has done nothing." The prophet's eyes lingered on her. He tapped his staff twice and said softly, "The child in her womb will reveal the truth." Fear bred suspicion, and suspicion bred violence. That night, 3 huts burned in the darkness. Men from the northern quarter swore they had seen a midwife walking with shadows at her side. They set her compound on fire. She escaped with her grandchildren, coughing and weeping, while the flames devoured everything she owned. Elsewhere, a group of young men cornered a woman whose child had been born with teeth. They demanded she cast the baby into the river. When she refused, they beat her until her husband came with a machete, scattering them like goats. The once harmonious village was tearing itself apart. No one trusted anyone. Mothers locked their doors. Fathers sharpened their knives at night. And still, the babies kept coming. Each one with a mouth full of small, sharp teeth. Inside her hut, Ngozi could not sleep. The child in her womb twisted and rolled violently, as though it was fighting her from the inside. She pressed her hands against her belly, tears streaming down her face. In her dreams, she saw the shrine again. She saw the box. This time it was open. Inside were rows of tiny teeth, glistening in the dark like pearls. They spilled out, covering her feet, rising to her knees, clattering like rain on a tin roof. And above them, a voice whispered, "You touch what was forbidden. Now you will birth what is forbidden." She woke screaming, startling her husband. He tried to calm her, but when his hand brushed her belly, he froze. The baby inside had bitten him, sharp little ridges pressing through her flesh into his palm. He yanked his hand back, staring at the tiny blood marks on his skin. His eyes widened in terror. "What have you done, Ngozi?" At dawn, the gong sounded again. The elders summoned the entire village to the square. Ihuoma, staff in hand, spoke with a voice like thunder. "This has gone too far. Our men are dying, our women are bleeding, our children are monsters. If we do nothing, Umeus will perish. Tonight, we will cleanse this land. We will offer sacrifice at the shrine. And whoever is guilty must confess before the gods, or the spirits themselves will drag them out." The crowd roared in agreement, fear giving way to desperation. The shrine had always been the last resort, the place where truth could not hide. By nightfall, the entire village would march to its gates. Ngozi felt her knees weaken. Her secret was no longer hers alone. The prophet's words rang in her head, "The child in her womb will reveal the truth." And deep inside, the baby kicked again, harder this time, as if laughing. That night, the entire village moved as one. Torches burned in every hand, shadows danced across the palm trees. And the sound of drums carried them forward like thunder. Women held their children close, men marched with machetes, and the elders led in silence, their faces grim. Ngozi staggered in the middle of the crowd, her belly heavy, her husband's hand gripping hers tightly. Her steps were slow, her breath ragged, but no one offered her pity. All eyes cut to her like knives. At the shrine, Dibia Okoro stood waiting. The firelight made his bald head gleam, and the chalk marks on his face glowed eerily. Before him, a pot of palm oil smoked, and the carved figures of the ancestors loomed in silence. "You have brought your fear," the priest said, his voice like iron. "Now bring your truth." The crowd pressed forward, whispering. Ngozi fell to her knees, her wrapper stained with sweat. Tears ran down her face as she lifted her hands toward the priest. "I am the one," she sobbed. "I am the one who touched the forbidden." The villagers gasped. Her husband staggered back in shock, clutching his head. Ngozi's voice broke as she told the story, how she had entered the shrine years ago, pregnant and desperate, how she had found the carved box hidden in the shadows. How she had opened it, seeking a charm to save her unborn child. "I only wanted to keep him alive," she cried. "But the child died anyway. And ever since, every child has come with teeth. I did not mean to curse us. I swear, I did not know." The priest closed his eyes, shaking his head. Some doors, once opened, never close. As if the spirits themselves had been waiting for her confession, Ngozi's labor seized her at once. She screamed, clutching her belly. Blood soaked the sand beneath her as the villagers panicked. "Take her into the shrine." The priest commanded. Inside the shrine, lit only by fire and shadow, Ngozi writhed on the ground. The air grew thick, heavy, charged with a presence none could deny. The drummers outside beat wildly, as if trying to keep the darkness away. Finally, with a cry that split the night, the baby slipped into the world. The midwife who caught it dropped it instantly, shrieking. The child was no ordinary infant. His mouth was lined with a full set of teeth, white and sharp as a predator's. His eyes glowed faintly red in the firelight. And when he opened his mouth, instead of crying, he laughed, a chilling, echoing laugh that silenced the entire shrine. Ngozi fainted. The midwife crawled back on her knees, muttering prayers. The priest's staff trembled in his hand. "It is not a child," he whispered. "It is the spirit of hunger itself. You fed the unborn with teeth, and now teeth will devour you." The shrine fire roared suddenly, leaping high into the air. The carved figures seemed to twist and move, their eyes glowing. The villagers outside fell to their knees as a great wind tore through the compound. The baby crawled from the mat on which he had been laid, impossibly strong. His teeth snapped at the air. His laughter echoed like thunder. "Bind it," the priest shouted. Men rushed forward with ropes, but the child bit through them like dry grass. One man screamed as his hand was ripped open. Another fell as the child's teeth tore his leg. The villagers cried out in terror. Women shielded their faces, men dropped their weapons. The priest raised his staff high and struck the ground. Lightning split the sky, and the shrine shook. "Back to the shadows from which you came," he roared. The fire exploded in a blinding flash. When the smoke cleared, the baby was gone. Only the sound of teeth chattering in the wind remained. Ngozi lay still on the ground, her chest no longer rising. Her secret had consumed her. Dawn broke over a village and changed forever. The curse did not end with Ngozi's death. Though the demon child was gone, every child born in Umu's continued to come with teeth. Some grew into normal children, their teeth falling away as they aged. Others did not survive, their hunger too great. The villagers lived in fear, but also in obedience. They built a second shrine beside the first, where they laid offerings of yam, kola nuts, and goat's blood, begging the ancestors to forgive them. No one ever dared open the forbidden box again. The name of Ngozi was never spoken. Her heart was left to rot, her story a warning whispered only in the dark. In every land, there are doors humans are not meant to open. Curiosity can feed a hunger that will never end. The unborn are sacred, disturb them, and their spirits may return, demanding what was denied. Children are not only flesh, they are also spirits. When we betray them, they do not forget.